Integrative Inquiry, Week 7, Compassion Cultivation.
Great. So to begin, let's invite in the grounding. So noticing the body in the chair, feet on the floor, seat on the chair, holding the weight of the body. Back upright, alert, yet relaxed. Noticing where the hands are placed. And inviting the eyes to soften. So it's as if you're looking but not really seeing. Or perhaps your eyes are closed. And then inviting a gentle attention to rest on the breath sensation in the body. Perhaps noticing the rise and fall of the belly with each inhale and exhale. You are here in this moment, in this chair, in this space and time. You intended to be here. You arrived here, and I am grateful. Whenever you're ready, gently lifting your gaze and bringing your attention back into the webinar. Compassion. Why compassion? In a world that elects and promotes leaders who are not compassion or show very little evidence of compassion, why compassion? Why are we inviting you into this space? Well, it helps us become aware of our interdependence. And we'll talk more about interdependence in a later webinar. But basically, it's about seeing the complexity of a situation with knowledge, with wisdom, with your wisdom traditions, being able to integrate those with the research knowledge that you have, the expertise of experience, all of that. Being able to see the complexity of a situation with a reverence for every individual and all of their lived experiences. And all of their lived knowledge, awareness, expertise. And engaging in a way where the seeing is wrapped in kindness and gratitude. It's like this visceral knowing that we're all doing the best we can with what we have from where we are in this moment. All of us, including you and the other person. Even when their behavior upsets you. Perhaps their awareness is low. Perhaps their internal resources are low. Perhaps their sleep is low. Their access to food is low. Their access to the knowledge that you have is low. So it's a trusting that we're all doing the best we can with what we have where we are, knowing that that always looks different, including amongst ourselves. And in this connection, what we're doing with compassion is we're leveraging, again, this neuroscience of the mirror neurons. Now, there's not actually anything called the mirror neuron. It's really, I mean, some researchers talk about it, but the idea here is that, you know, when you walk into a room and you can sense the emotion in the room, you can sense the tension, you can sense the joy, you can sense the fear, you can sense that even though no word has been spoken. That's your mirror neurons activating. You can also feel that. How about a friend coming to you who's had a significant disappointment? Can you feel that? How about a friend coming to you who's so excited that they get to do something that they've always wanted to do? You can sense that. This is physiologically happening. It's what we call mirror neurons. Highly debated research, but the point is that there's a felt sense. We won't go into all of that research here. When we break this down into a neuroscience definition, we are using Dr. Desari's work, and there are 4 parts. There's this feeling for you, sometimes referred to as empathy, and an understanding why you are feeling that way or why you're suffering. So there's 2 parts. There's affective, there's that felt sense, I feel for you, and there's a cognitive part. I understand why you're feeling that way. In this case, I understand why you're in pain or suffering. And then there's a 3rd part. There's a motivation. Oh my gosh, I wish to alleviate you from your pain and suffering. I wish to alleviate you from your pain and suffering. And then there may be an action. I will alleviate your suffering in this way. And this is more of a co-creation. So it's not, oh, I'm gonna take care of you in this way, not a condescending thing. It's a co-creation. Like, let's move into action and let's co-create a solution. So, but there's an actual action. So 4 parts: affective, cognitive, motivational, affective, action, affective, cognitive, motivational, and action. Now, we understand this to be the case because, again, of neuroscience. So we can see this emotional resonance taking place. The mirror neurons that I talked about, we can actually see like the pain centers that are activated in another person be activated in a person witnessing the pain or experiencing the pain. And there's also a cognitive perspective taking. Now, this cognitive perspective taking is incredibly important because while feeling for another helps us connect to another, it builds sort of a validity and trust, I also need to have the cognitive perspective taking and remember, oh, that's you, not me. If I don't have this cognitive perspective taking, I understand while you're in pain, I won't be able to move into the other 2 pieces in a healthful, skillful way. Let me say that again. If I don't engage, if I just stay in emotional resonance and don't engage cognitive perspective taking, I understand your pain. I understand why you are in pain, even if I don't agree with it, what caused it, or the choice maybe that you made. If I don't move into this cognitive perspective taking, then I won't necessarily disengage. I'll become emotionally entangled and I won't be able to skillfully be motivated and alleviate the other's pain and suffering. I might get caught up in that emotion, take on the emotion, and then move out of emotion, which may not be skillful and it may not be helpful. It actually may cause that person and myself harm or others harm. Okay, and this is really important because of there's some work that I used to do with UNESCO in preventing violent extremism. When you see gangs, kind of gang taking place, or people recruiting people into terrorist activities or white supremacy activities, they're leveraging emotional resonance and emotional contagion, and they're moving away from cognitive perspective taking. This is why we did the cognitive flexibility training last week, so that we can be with what we're experiencing, not sweep it away, but name it, tune on this medial prefrontal cortex so that we can act skillfully with awareness, with wisdom. This also helps us, this empathy, feeling for and understanding of, connects us with people, but it can move us into empathetic distress. Anybody notice that? Like, oh my gosh, there's so much pain, I can't handle it. This is huge, right? With our society right now, what we're witnessing, what we're all experiencing, what we see in the classroom, what we see out of classroom, so much distress. And if I stay in that and connect so much, I become distressed and I am taken down as well. And so it creates all of these sorts of things, right? But when we engage the cognitive perspective taking and we cultivate the motivation to alleviate the pain and suffering, and then a skillful action, then we can recognize that, okay, this person is experiencing this. I'm going to breathe. I have all these practices. I'm going to cultivate some kindness, some positive feelings. I'm going to harness that negative and transform it, the practices we were working on earlier, right? And this helps me then become the skillful leader, the wise leader, see the options that are possible to shift what's underlies that pain and suffering. Does that make sense? And obviously, here are some interpersonal benefits. There's the activation, the prosocial brain regions that connects us. And again, we're showing like there's a difference between the feeling for and getting lost in that, and then utilizing our strategies to actually engage in a response, a skillful response. Excuse me, I'm going to take some water because I feel a cough arising. Okay, so when we engage in at least 9 weeks of daily mindful compassion cultivation training, and again, what we've been introducing to you every week, but not inviting you to engage in it daily, because we only promised you an hour and a half of your time. But if you'd like to begin to practice this daily, what we see from at least 8 to 9 weeks, actually 9 weeks of daily practice, is we get to see this activating of empathetic resonance. We'll talk more about this in the in-class portion, but we can begin to see feeling for and a caring for people that we have put in our out group previously. So powerful. So putting people in an out group is a cognitive experience. That person is whatever, right? So they're out. They're not in my in group. I put them in my out group. So we can turn on that empathetic resonance and bring them back into our in group. That's a practice. And actually, again, begin to feel for them, their pain and suffering, in a way to motivate us to support problem solving. It reduces implicit bias, implicit racism, correspondence bias, negativity bias, and increases prosocial behavior. So powerful. These practices are so powerful, but they need to be practiced daily. What I also want to say here is that compassion is not psychologizing. When I'm practicing compassion, I'm never trying to fix somebody or diagnose them. I'm not trying to fix them or diagnose them. And I might not agree with their perspective that created the pain and suffering in the first place. I can practice compassion without agreeing with that. I can also practice compassion without agreeing with what caused the pain. And this is key. There's a lot of injustice that we experience in our workplace and in our society and our community. I can practice compassion for people without agreeing to what caused that pain. Right? That's, remember when we talked about the you as you were going into this class? If you're not sure what I'm talking about, the recruiting video to you to take this class, so we talked about several practices. And the transformative restorative justice, that's the up part of the you. But right now we're still in the presencing to what is part of the you training. So I can engage in these practices without agreeing with what caused the pain. And there are some some foundational practices that we'll be practicing next week. Again, if you're excited about this, you can go to the guided audio practices, and practice the seeing similarities. It's called Just Like Me or Just As Me, where we connect with common humanity. We see each other as human beings first. We see each other as human beings first, not as a label that we might put on them, or that they put on themselves, or that they proudly take on themselves that might push us out of their in-group, right? So this is connecting with each other, seeing similarities, and then an offering of kindness, an offering of this genuine, heartfelt kindness, and we'll get engaged in a lot of those practices. I love these practices. They're so yummy. So Just Like Me or As Me or loving kindness, and we'll practice those next week. All right, so your practical takeaways. Compassion can help alleviate empathetic distress you may be feeling from connecting and feeling for the people you work with, the people that depend on you. So this practice of being with that pain and saying, this is their pain, and I'm going to use this practice of who would I believe, who would I be if I chose this thought, What would I be empowered to do, right? Some of the practices that we've been practicing up until this point. And then you can begin to connect. Of course, this person is a human being. I may not have agreed with their behavior, their choice, but we can still move into problem solving. So we can cultivate this pro-social behavior. And it can reduce implicit bias, implicit racism, and stereotype threat. Practices are just like me, seeing each other as human beings just as I am, even though we may not have the same color of skin, have the same gender identity, sexual orientation, religion, spiritual practice, political belief, foods that we like, go on, teams that we root for, human being just as I am. And then the loving kindness, the wishes for well-being to arise for the other and self. And a reminder that doing our best with what we have from where we are, and so is everyone else. Before we close this, this piece, I need to share one more thing with you. And that is an awareness that I have of myself when I am behaving in ways that I don't like about myself. I have often forgot that the other person is a human being. Instead, I've made them some cog in a bureaucratic wheel or a cog in a service wheel, and I have forgotten that they may have desires and hopes and dreams to be happy just as I do. I may have forgotten that what they're doing, they believe will resolve a problem just as what I'm doing, I believe will resolve the problem. I forget to connect with this fundamental humanness. So my invitation to you as you engage in these practices is, and as you move into your next week, is every time you look at a human being, see if just noticing them and saying, human being just as I have. They have dreams and desires just as I do. They wish to be happy and healthy and live productive and meaningful lives just as I do. See how that works for you. Okay, see what happens next. All right. Questions, comments, please reach out. I'm happy to be of service. And again, our invitation, connect with your buddy. Post your questions at the course website. If you'd like the discussion board, respond if you'd like to do that. Practice the focused breathing every day. The just like me, seeing the human being just as I am human. Practice every day. The self-compassion, compassion. You can wish for pain and suffering to be alleviated as you see it. You can do that quietly. And we'll practice more in our in-class practice. Your 2-minute journal and reflect on your weekly poem. All right. Thank you so much. Again, such a joy for me to be on this journey with you. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.